Go. Hi, this is my professional brand and development career research report. Going into this is some of the tasks that we did over the 8 weeks. So I've got my triptych, my advanced gifts, which I was extremely happy about creating as I used a different technique that wasn't said within the lecture and I actually used a 3D rendering. So the woman on black here is actually a 3D rendering that I created, and you're able to view those at the link there. Going into this one here, this is my nowness video. Again, created it with the theme of distortion, which I will explore throughout this entire presentation. So yeah, using keying tools. Again, this is just an extension on that nowness video with adding sound. Again, I added my voice over the top, which I spoke about me missing partying and seeing in my friends. This is the hologram task. Unfortunately, I wrote a small thing here just because my attempt at the hologram task, I wasn't able to get it working, sadly. So I just wrote a small thing saying that. Here is my self-portrait that I created. Again, I used that idea of distortion to create my portrait, adding my blurred out face here and some fingerprint marks. I added it into the aesthetic of an anime I've been watching. Again, that uses a lot of like cyber dystopian things, so I sort of felt it matched it perfectly. Again, this is my interview, which I used Ed Perkins, who is one of the biggest vintage resellers in the United Kingdom. He supplies most of the London vintage shops with their stock. So again, it was quite an interesting thing to have his take on COVID and how it's affected his business as a whole. Again, this is my collage that I created. Again, I did this in remembrance of George Floyd, who unfortunately passed away over the last couple of weeks. And again, obviously, it's been highlighting how big police brutality is. So I made this collage to sort of tribute that. Going into here is my personal branding. First thing I looked at was jobs, and the main one I looked at was a design term for show studio. Again, looking at key skills like good communication, able to work independently. And here's my CV and cover letter for that role that I made. Going into the second role, and probably the role I was most interested about, is the junior stylist role at Goodhood. Again, I work as a junior stylist as it is, so this role was quite interesting to look at, and it's something I actually might go for myself in real life, not just for this brief. Again, this is my CV and cover letter for that. And here is my video interview, which I've added a link to view for this role. Again, I recorded myself reasons why I should have the role. The third and final one I looked at was Farfetch, was a fashion assistant. Again, very similar to the one at Goodhood, working with brands and stuff. Again, it's something I was quite interested in. It did require a boundary of 1 to 2 years, so it wasn't something I'd probably do coming out of university, but sort of what you were doing in the role seemed really interesting and something I'd like to do. And then here is my brand research for Goodhood. Again, I looked at the brand, where it is, what they stock, and a bit more about it there. And then here is my consumer matrix for Goodhood. Again, I looked at a lot of their competitors like Dover Street Market, Farfetched, but I also looked at sort of some cheaper alternatives like Urban Outfitters. Again, they stock a wide range of brands and sort of for that alternative, bit more edgy look, but at a cheaper price. The same as Slam City Skates. They sell a lot more obscure brands that you would only find in their store. So they're kind of like Goodhood, I find, in a way, but at a lower end price. Again, looking more, this is more the competitors for Goodhood. The main one I outlined here probably would be Dover Street Market, just purely because the exclusivity and branding they have there. Again, a lot of drops you would find at Dover Street would suit perfectly for Goodhood and vice versa. And even looking at their websites here, they're very similarly laid out with black and white, some block photos. Again, Warren Dover Street does have a bit more colour. And then this is sort of looking at Goodhood's social media page. I find their media page to follow quite a certain aesthetic. I find it uses a lot of pastel colours, but also like how they do a lot of their photos in-house, which compared to other competitors, not a lot of people do. So I found it really interesting. They sort of follow a certain aesthetic and it kind of flows a lot nicer. Whereas if you look at something like Dover Street Market, they use a lot of the editorial designs from the brands, but they use it in a way. They use a triptych method. It's again, all these three images will correlate to each brand on each row. So even though it doesn't really follow a theme or colour palette like Goodhood, they sort of have a nice flow of themes. So I thought it's quite interesting to sort of see, as I listed these as the two major competitors. The other one I listed was Farfetched. Again, they sort of don't have a theme to their page. I find it's quite muddled and around. I didn't really like it. Whereas looking at Dover Street Market and the other ones, I kind of find their pages are a lot more cleaner and a lot more nicer on the eye. See, I wasn't a fan of Farfetched too much, and especially surprising for being such a big company. And again, this is just looking a bit more at Goodhood's website and how they have it laid out. I like the fact they have a lot of blogs and interviews, so it sort of breaks up shopping. And the same as Dover Street Market, whereas they sort of have the same layout, but they're a bit more shop orientated as they are, and rather not having blogs and stuff. And the same as Farfetched. I find Farfetched and Goodhood's websites are pretty much identical, bar the fact that you have the shop men and women bit as well as blogs and stuff you can access. The only downside to Farfetched I found was that you can't access these blogs once they're gone, so it'd be something maybe that they should do for like Goodhood to have that. And this is my consumer profile for Goodhood. Again, I always find someone who's just graduated out of universities, either in graphic design or fashion, likes to stand out, usually like resides in East London, won't go as far as north. Yeah, likes East London, likes fair trade, likes reducing his carbon footprint, but likes to stand out from the rest of the crowd. And here's some of the strengths for Goodhood. Again, main strength I did is the unique range of brands that they sell. Again, they sell a lot of brands that you won't find anywhere else. But again, that plays in their weakness because they're quite niche of what they sell. It doesn't appeal to everyone. And then going into their opportunities, again, they could expand on that blog section, maybe have some customer interactivity there to interact with customers, like show off their fits rather than just showing off bits of that. So they have a lot of opportunity to explore that. Again, their threats, I find, again, they're very high priced in the market, so it can put a lot of people off. Again, that nicheness, again, I always find is a big threat for them. Again, this is my interview. I was lucky enough to secure an interview with Barbs, who's actually my auntie's best friend in the USA. He was actually an in-store display and advertisement designer for Gucci. Again, I sort of spoke about how her job roles changed because she's used to designing big storefronts and displays in places like Macy's and Dover Street in New York. So just how her roles have changed and stuff, and I found the interview quite interesting to look at that and looking at ways she's adapting to do that. And there's just more of the questions from that interview. And then finally, the links to my blog and LinkedIn, and then I updated my show reel to sort of show off a bit more of that, as well as my blog here for the various weeks of this task. And that's my references. Thank you.